Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles, and on this episode we're doing It Came From The Network. Topic of this It Came From The Network, Saturday night's main event, Season 2, Episode 7, originally Saturday night's main event number 24, coming to us from November 25th, 1989. And the reason I picked this show is because just a few days ago we lost Lanny Poffo, aka The Genius. I wanted to review this as kind of a tribute to him, being that this is basically his most high-profile match, so I chose this show because of that. Now, if you haven't seen my shows before, I rate everything on a 1 to 5 scale. 1 is the worst, 5 is the best. Let's jump right into it. Every one of these has interviews with the combatants before their matches. I won't cover that too much because they're pretty much standard fare. First match of the show, we get the Ultimate Warrior defending the Intercontinental Championship against Andre the Giant. Andre has Heenan with him. This is a bad match. There's nothing more I could really say about that. Andre was past the point that he could have a good match with pretty much anybody. I don't know that there's a wrestler in the world that could have pulled a great match out of Andre the Giant. He was hurting very bad. His back was in bad shape. His knees were in bad shape. And the Ultimate Warrior, in my opinion, was only ever to accomplish great matches when he had an opponent that pulled him there. Like, his matches with Savage were good. His matches with Rick Rude were always really good. His WrestleMania 6 against Hulk Hogan, I think, is probably his best match. But this is just trash. And I hate to say that because I have so much respect for Andre the Giant that I hate to lump him in there with this on this show. Ultimately, Andre gets tied up in the ropes. Bobby Heenan comes in. Him and the Warrior go back and forth. He picks him up to slam him as Andre's getting let out of the ropes by the ref. He slams Heenan into the Andre, thus getting Heenan and Andre disqualified, letting the Warrior win by disqualification. To me, just another... Like I said, I've said it all through this. You could probably guess. Just a bad match. I'm giving this one a 1. Next up, we have the match that was the reason for me picking this show. The Genius Lanny Poffo going up against Hulk Hogan. This match is probably my favorite match on the card. The way they worked this and the psychology behind it, the Genius using his athleticism and his wit against a much stronger, much bigger wrestler in Hulk Hogan to try and outsmart him, to outpace him. This was fantastic, and in no small part on Hulk Hogan's end. A lot of people deride Hulk Hogan's skills, but when he had someone in there with him, like a Genius, like a Randy Savage, that he could put on a great match with, he was able to do so, and this is a great match. It may not be your thousands of near falls, kicking out of each other's finisher match that we're used to nowadays, but the psychology was there. During the match, Mr. Perfect comes out, kind of distracts Hogan by messing with the World Championship. He puts his gum on it. Hogan gets a little bit too involved with Mr. Perfect. The Genius hits him from behind, ultimately causing Hulk Hogan to get counted out, thus making this a win for the Genius. He didn't win the World Championship, but he won the match by countout, thus making his strategy strong and correct. He got the win over Hulk Hogan. He outsmarted him. Like I said, this is probably my favorite match of the card. I'm giving this one a 5. I thought it was really good. Next up, we have Dusty Rhodes versus the Big Boss Man. A lot of people talk negatively about Dusty Rhodes' time in the WWF and the polka dots and everything with that. This, to me, though, was a fantastic feud. Dusty and the Boss Man, I loved their work against each other. I think these guys were a perfect fit. This match was really fun. I enjoyed their interactions with each other. Ultimately, we get down to the end, and Slick, the Big Boss Man's manager, is instructed to get him the nightstick. He starts arguing with a fan that's at ringside. We'll cover her more in a moment, thus distracting the Boss Man, which gives Dusty Rhodes the opportunity to pick up the win on it. Dusty does win the match. Afterwards, we see Slick and the Boss Man arguing a bit, going to the back. We see the lady in the front row. Dusty Rhodes points at her, tells her to come into the ring. They don't mention her name, but it ends up that it is Sapphire. If you remember, Sapphire was Dusty Rhodes' manager in the WWF for a little while. A lot of people deride Sapphire and don't like that era of Dusty Rhodes, don't like the polka dots. I always enjoyed it. I thought they were very enjoyable. They were highly entertaining. And yeah, she's not as polished as a manager as Bobby Heenan or Slick even, or Freddie Blassie or any of the people that were in WWF at the time. However, she represents represented the fan, the common person. Like Dusty Rhodes represented the common man, Sapphire represented the common woman. Just a hard-working woman who loved wrestling. And that's actually the story. She was a longtime fan that loved wrestling. Those two danced for a little while. I'm going to give this match a 4. Like I said, I thought it was highly enjoyable. Next up, we have Mr. Perfect going up against the Red Rooster. Mr. Perfect has the Genius with him. This is an interesting match because it's been long rumored that either Terry Taylor, the Red Rooster, or Mr. Perfect, Curt Hennig, were going to get that Mr. Perfect gimmick. And it's rumored that Terry Taylor didn't get it because of his attitude issues, and they gave him the Red Rooster as kind of a way to put him in his place a bit. I don't know that he would have fit the Mr. Perfect character as well as Curt Hennig did. Curt Hennig is a fantastic wrestler. This is one of the best pairings of a gimmick to a wrestler in the history of the WWF. The Mr. Perfect gimmick, no pun intended, was absolutely perfect for Curt Hennig. He could pull that off. I don't know that Terry Taylor would have. I think it would have been good. I think Terry Taylor is a fantastic wrestler, but he doesn't have near the charisma that Mr. Perfect has. This was a good match. I rather enjoyed it. Mr. Perfect does win with the Perfect Plex. I'm giving this one a 3. Now we roll into our main event, which in the pre-interviews we see a little bit of a tension between Bobby Heenan and his team, the Brainbusters. That leads us into the match. The Brainbusters, Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard, going up against the Rockers, Marty Jannetty and Shawn Michaels, in a 2 out of 3 falls match. I thought this was a fun match. The Rockers pick up the first fall, which caused a little bit of an argument between Heenan and his team, the Brainbusters. Heenan walks away. We go to commercial. They come back. Heenan's in the back with Jesse Ventura doing an interview, basically saying the Brainbusters are fired. He's done with them. That's it. They won't listen to him. Brainbusters pick up the win in the second fall. Rockers pick up the third fall, thus winning 2 out of the 3 falls. These teams always had fantastic matches with each other. It kind of is the template for what the Young Bucks and FTR do when they meet up with each other now. You get the fast, high-flying team versus the mat technicians. And you can see a lot of what FTR does is based on what the Brainbusters, on what Arn and Tully did back at this time frame. I rather enjoyed this match. I'm giving it a 4. We go into the final couple segments of the show. First off is a interview segment with Mr. Perfect and the Genius. This is probably the most famous part of this show. Mr. Perfect has the World Championship. He starts destroying it with a hammer, beating it, and no, to dispel the rumor, that is not the Hardcore Championship. Watch this video. You can see it breaks totally differently than the initial Hardcore Championship did. It's not the same belt. Perfect basically says he should be the #1 contender for the championship. He has a perfect record. He'd be the perfect opponent. The Genius is basically backing up what he says. Just a fantastic little piece of a segment. Then we go to Hulk Hogan's interview talking about what just happened with Mean Gene Okerlund. Hogan seems a little bit despondent, says he's upset at himself for losing to the Genius. He's more upset that Mr. Perfect would destroy the belt, the championship that represents Hulkamania. I thought this was fantastic. It sets up a match for the next Saturday night's main event between Hulk Hogan and Mr. Perfect. I thought this was a really well done segment. Overall, I'm going to give the show a 4. Pretty much everything but the Andre the Giant and Warrior match I thought was really solid. The Genius and Hulk Hogan match, I loved the psychology in it. The Rockers and the Brainbusters, I could watch that all day, every day. I'm a fan of tag team wrestling, and these are 2 great tag teams. This is a great show, pretty much from the second match on. I definitely highly recommend going back and checking it out. With all that being said, if you made it all the way to the end, let's smash that like button, share the video, subscribe if you haven't. If you made it to the end, let me know your favorite Lanny Poffo memory or Genius memory. Hit me down here in the comments. Since we are doing this as a quasi-tribute to him, let me know what you remember of Lanny Poffo and what you loved about him, or liked about him, or what you hated about him if you hated him. With all that being said, my name is George Coles, and this has been another It Came From The Network.